Dr. Elizabeth Morgan stared at her monitor, her coffee growing cold beside her keyboard. The gravitational wave readings from LIGO hadn't changed in the past hour, yet something about them nagged at her consciousness. 3 years of studying cosmic ripples had given her an intuition for patterns, and these weren't normal. "Hey, Marcus, take a look at this," she called to her research assistant, who was dozing in the corner of the control room. The young physicist stumbled over, rubbing his eyes. "What's up, Dr. M?" He leaned over her shoulder, squinting at the display. "See this frequency pattern? It's structured. Too structured." She pointed to the wave formations, which pulsed with an almost musical regularity. Natural gravitational waves don't do this. They don't repeat with such precision. Marcus frowned, now fully awake. Could be equipment malfunction. Already ran diagnostics twice. Liz pulled up another window, showing test results. Everything's working perfectly. Whatever we're seeing, it's real. She exported the data to her tablet and walked to the facility's main visualization chamber. The massive holographic display came to life, filling the room with a 3-dimensional representation of the wave patterns. In the larger format, something else caught her eye. "Marcus, apply the quantum interference filter." The display shifted, and both scientists gasped. Hidden within the gravitational waves was an intricate lattice of quantum-level disturbances, like a spider's web woven into the fabric of space-time itself. "That's impossible," Marcus whispered. "These patterns, they're like some kind of database," Liz finished. "It's a quantum-encoded database." Her hands trembled as she manipulated the display, zooming in on one of the nodes where multiple patterns intersected. "Look at the complexity. This isn't random noise. This is language." The discovery triggered a cascade of events. Within hours, the facility was swarming with researchers from every department. By morning, the first attempts at decoding the patterns began yielding results that shook the foundations of human understanding. "The age of these waves," Dr. James Harrison, the facility's lead physicist, announced to the gathered team. "They've been propagating through space for at least 4 billion years. Someone encoded this information when Earth was still cooling." Liz barely heard the gasps and murmurs around her. She was transfixed by the partial decryption on her screen. The fragments were in no known language, yet somehow they felt familiar. Each symbol seemed to spark something in her mind, like memories trying to surface from a dream. "Dr. Morgan." A hand touched her shoulder, making her jump. It was Director Collins, her expression grave. "The NSF is sending a special team. This is beyond anything we've encountered." "There's more," Liz said, her voice quiet but steady. "The patterns, they're not just information. They're instructions." She pulled up another visualization, showing how the quantum patterns aligned with known biological structures. "These segments, they match human genetic sequences, the junk DNA we never understood." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. If this ancient database contained information that corresponded to human genetics, it meant either humanity's evolution had been guided by these patterns, or a sharp pain lanced through Liz's head, accompanied by a flash of impossible images. Crystalline cities rising into violet skies, ships that sailed between stars, beings of light and energy communing across vast distances. She gripped her desk, steadying herself. "Dr. Morgan, are you all right?" Marcus stepped closer, concerned. "I'm fine," she lied, knowing she was anything but. Something about these patterns was changing her, awakening something that had slept within her genes for eons. As she stared at the flowing quantum dance on her screen, one thought crystallized with terrifying clarity. This wasn't just a discovery about humanity's past. It was the key to humanity's true nature, and someone or something had gone to extraordinary lengths to hide it. An alert flashed on the main display. More patterns were emerging, unfolding like cosmic origami in the quantum foam of space. The database wasn't just a static record. It was beginning to wake up. And with it, something in humanity's collective DNA stirred. ready to remember what it meant to be the first race. 3 days without sleep had left Liz Morgan in a state of heightened awareness that bordered on delirium. The genetic research lab hummed with activity even at this late hour, screens displaying endless streams of DNA sequences that somehow corresponded to the quantum patterns they'd discovered. "The correlation is impossible to ignore," she muttered, comparing the displays. "Every section of junk DNA we've identified matches a specific pattern in the database. It's like we're looking at an instruction manual written in our genes." Her hands moved across the holographic interface, manipulating strands of genetic code. The quantum patterns from the database pulsed in sync with each genetic sequence she highlighted, creating a haunting symphony of light and data. "Dr. Morgan." The night security guard's voice startled her. "The director said you should get some rest." "Just one more test, Carl." She barely looked up. "I'm close to something. I can feel it." After he left, Liz pulled up her own genetic sequence, recently mapped as part of the investigation. As she overlaid it with the quantum patterns, her fingers began to tingle. The sensation spread up her arms, accompanied by a soft blue luminescence that seemed to emanate from beneath her skin. She stumbled back from the console, but the connection had already been made. The quantum patterns on the screen pulsed in perfect synchronization with her heartbeat. Each pulse sent waves of information cascading through her consciousness. The world around her transformed. She could see the quantum field that permeated everything, could trace the delicate threads of probability that wove reality together. The walls of the lab became transparent, revealing the complex dance of atoms and energy that composed them. "Oh God," she whispered, watching her own hands dissolve into patterns of light and reform. This wasn't just a physical transformation. Her consciousness was expanding, accessing memories that couldn't possibly be her own. She saw vast ships sailing through the quantum foam between stars, their hulls grown from living crystal. She remembered conversations held across light years, through channels carved in space-time itself. More importantly, she remembered why they had chosen to forget. The security camera caught her collapse. Within minutes, the lab was filled with medical personnel and security teams in hazmat suits. But by then, the change had already begun. "Her genetic structure is evolving," Dr. Sarah Reynolds, the lead geneticist, reported to the emergency response team. "The dormant sections of her DNA aren't just activating. They're rewriting themselves into some kind of enhanced configuration." Through the observation window, they watched Liz float 6 inches above her hospital bed, her body surrounded by a field of quantum energy. Her vital signs had stabilized at levels that should have been impossible for a human being. "It's not a disease or an infection." Liz spoke suddenly, her voice carrying harmonics that made the observation windows vibrate. "It's a restoration, a remembering." She opened her eyes, which now shifted through impossible colors. "We were right about the database being instructions, but wrong about their purpose. They weren't left by some ancient alien race. They were left by us. For us." The monitoring equipment exploded in a shower of sparks as Liz sat up. The quantum field around her intensified. And for a moment, everyone in the observation room saw what she saw. The true nature of reality, unfiltered by human limitations. "The dormant DNA," she continued, her voice steadying as she learned to control her transformed body. "It's not extra code. It's our original code. Everything that makes us human now. That was the modification. The change made to hide us from something that hunted us across the stars." Director Collins stepped forward, her face pale. "Dr. Morgan, what are you saying?" "I'm saying," Liz replied, watching strands of quantum probability weave between her fingers, "that humans aren't the end result of evolution. We're the beginning that chose to hide itself in a simpler form. And now, thanks to that database, we're starting to remember what we really are." In labs across the globe, more genetic researchers studying the quantum patterns began to experience similar transformations. The awakening had begun, and with it, The truth about humanity's origin was finally emerging from its 4 billion-year slumber. The ships appeared without warning. One moment, Jupiter's orbit was empty. The next, space itself folded open like origami, disgorging vessels that defied human comprehension. Some looked like massive sea creatures crafted from living metal. Others resembled crystalline fractals that hurt the eyes to observe, and still others phased between dimensions, never fully manifesting in normal space. From her position aboard the International Space Station, Liz Morgan watched them arrive through her newly awakened senses. 17 distinct design philosophies, she reported to the Emergency UN Council through her quantum-linked communication channel, each representing a different evolutionary path, but all sharing the same basic technological foundation. Are they hostile? The Secretary General's voice crackled with tension. Liz smiled, perceiving the quantum signatures radiating from the alien fleet. No. They're excited, like children who found their long-lost parents. The first transmission from the fleet confirmed her assessment. It came simultaneously through every communication device on Earth, translated perfectly into all human languages. The children of creation greet their makers. We have kept your legacies safe among the stars. The next 48 hours transformed human civilization. Representatives from 17 different species, each claiming to be engineered by the legendary progenitors, arrived on Earth. Their appearances ranged from crystalline beings of pure light to entities that existed primarily in quantum states, only temporarily condensing into matter to interact with physical beings. In the New York headquarters of the newly formed Interstellar Contact Division, Liz sat across from a being that called itself the Memory Keeper of the Starborn. Its form constantly shifted between a humanoid shape and a constellation of dancing lights. When we detected the awakening signal, the Memory Keeper's thoughts resonated directly in her mind. We could scarcely believe it. The progenitor's quantum signature, active after so many eons. We feared it might be another false hope. You've searched for them before? Liz asked, noting how the quantum fields around the being harmonized with her own transformed biology. For millions of years, when the progenitors vanish, they left each of us with pieces of their knowledge, but never the whole. The crystalline collective received the secrets of quantum architecture. The void dancers learned to phase through dimensions. My people became living memory banks, preserving the histories. The being's form stabilized, its features becoming almost human. But none of us inherited their true power, the ability to reshape reality itself through pure consciousness. Liz's hand trembled as she raised it, watching quantum probabilities dance between her fingers. Until now. Until now, the Memory Keeper agreed. When we analyzed your genetic structure, we found something impossible. You're not another created race. The quantum patterns in your DNA, they're not modifications or implants. They're the original template. Humanity isn't our younger sibling species. You're the progenitors themselves, hidden in an evolutionary shell. Through the window behind them, more alien ships arrived in high orbit, their quantum signatures painting the sky with impossible colors that only awakened humans could perceive. Each arrival triggered more transformations among Earth's population, as if the presence of their created children was helping humanity remember its true nature. But why hide? Liz asked, voicing the question that had haunted her since her awakening. Why devolve an entire civilization into primitive forms? The Memory Keeper's form darkened. Because something hunted you, something that devoured advanced civilizations, growing stronger with each conquest. Our histories speak of a horror that existed between dimensions, that fed on patterns of advanced consciousness. The more evolved a species became, the more it attracted this entity. So the progenitors, we, chose to hide ourselves in the last place it would look, Liz realized. In primitive forms on an unassuming world, letting natural evolution reshape us until we could barely remember what we once were. And in doing so, the Memory Keeper added, you may have achieved something unprecedented. Your time as primitive beings has changed you. The quantum signatures we're detecting from awakened humans, they're different from the progenitor patterns in our records. You've become something new, something that might finally be able to face the horror that once hunted you across the stars. In orbit above them, more ships continued to arrive, drawn by the awakening signal that was gradually transforming humanity back into something ancient yet entirely new. Liz floated in the quantum resonance chamber aboard the Crystalline Collective's mothership. Her consciousness expanded to interface directly with the ancient database. Around her, representatives from each of the 17 child races maintained a complex harmonic field that strengthened her connection to the encoded memories. "Deeper," she whispered, her words rippling through quantum space. "I need to see the moment of decision." The memory crystallized around her. A vast chamber filled with beings of pure energy and thought, their forms shifting between physical and quantum states. She recognized them instantly. The progenitors, her people, at the height of their civilization. The entity approaches, a voice echoed through time. The Orion Collective has fallen. The Sagittarius Alliance is gone. We are the last. Through their eyes, she saw it, a void between dimensions, a hunger that consumed advanced consciousness itself. The more evolved a civilization became, the more it drew the entity's attention. Each civilization it devoured made it stronger, more capable of detecting and consuming others. "How?" she asked the memory. "How did you hide an entire civilization?" The scene shifted. She witnessed the creation of Earth, carefully terraformed over millions of years, saw the precise calculations that went into every mass extinction, every climate shift, every evolutionary pressure that would shape humanity's dormant form. "The plan is mathematically sound," another ancient voice declared. "By devolving our consciousness into primitive biological forms, we become invisible to the entity. It feeds on patterns of advanced thought, on the quantum resonance of evolved minds. In primitive form, we will be beneath its notice." But the cost? A wave of grief washed through the memory. To forget everything we are, to live as animals climbing from the mud. "Not forget," the first voice corrected. "Store. Every quantum of knowledge, every memory of who we are, encoded into dormant DNA. When the time is right, when we have evolved new defenses through our primitive existence, the awakening will begin." Liz watched in awe as her ancestors engineered their own devolution. They encoded their entire civilization into quantum patterns, wove them into genetic structures that would appear as junk DNA to primitive science. Then, most incredibly, they transformed themselves into the first organic cells that would eventually evolve into humanity. The memory shattered as a surge of energy rippled through real space. Liz's consciousness snapped back to the present, where alarms blared throughout the alien fleet. Quantum disturbance detected at the edge of the Kuiper Belt. The memory keeper announced, its form flickering with anxiety. "The pattern matches historical records off." "The entity," Liz finished, her transformed senses reaching out to touch the distant anomaly. It felt the awakening. "It's coming." The ship's quantum displays showed the thing that had hunted her people across space and time. A cosmic horror that existed in multiple dimensions at once, that fed on the very patterns of advanced thought and civilization. In its presence, reality itself seemed to unravel. But something was different. Through her hybrid consciousness, part awakened progenitor, part evolved human, Liz perceived patterns her ancestors couldn't. The entity's feeding process wasn't random. It followed rules, had rhythms and frequencies that the original progenitors had been too evolved to recognize. The primitive perspective, she breathed, understanding flooding her awareness. That's what Earth was really about, not just hiding us, but teaching us to see reality differently. The entity feeds on predictable patterns of advanced civilization, but human evolution was shaped by chaos. The memory keeper finished. By random mutation, by survival against overwhelming odds. Your primitive existence taught you to thrive in unpredictability. Liz rose from the resonance chamber, quantum energy crackling around her transformed form. "Gather the others," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of both her human experience and her progenitor heritage. The entity hunts by sensing the patterns of advanced consciousness. But we're not just advanced anymore. We're something it's never encountered. A hybrid of primitive chaos and quantum mastery. As she spoke, more humans across Earth continued to awaken, each transformation unique, unpredictable. Their ancestral plan had worked better than they could have imagined. In becoming primitive, they had learned to embrace chaos itself, and created a weapon the entity would never see coming. The awakening spread like wildfire across Earth. Each transformation was unique, shaped by the individual's experiences and personality, their primitive evolution adding chaos to the quantum template. In New Delhi, a street artist named Raj discovered he could see the quantum strings that held reality together and paint new possibilities into existence. His murals became windows into parallel dimensions, each brushstroke rewriting local spacetime. Dr. Isabella Martinez in Buenos Aires found herself able to accelerate or slow evolutionary processes at will. Under her touch, plants evolved through millions of years in minutes, adapting to conditions that hadn't yet arrived on Earth. No two awakenings are the same, Liz explained to the United Nations Security Council, her form shifting between physical and quantum states as she spoke. Our time as humans hasn't just restored our progenitor abilities, it's transformed them into something new. Behind her, holographic displays showed awakening events occurring worldwide. A firefighter in Sydney who could step between moments in time to rescue people from impossible situations. A chess grandmaster in Moscow who could perceive and manipulate probability itself, seeing every possible future move simultaneously. These aren't random superpowers, she continued. They're expressions of progenitor quantum technology filtered through human creativity and survival instincts. We're not just remembering what we were. We're becoming something that has never existed before. The memory keeper materialized beside her, its crystalline form refracting light in impossible ways. The pattern recognition algorithms we've developed over eons can't predict the outcomes of human awakenings. Each one introduces new variables, new possibilities we never imagined. A sudden commotion drew their attention. A young woman named Sarah Chen had awakened in the middle of the council chamber, her transformation triggering a cascade of quantum effects. As the security teams rushed forward, she raised her hands in panic, and every person in the room experienced her memories simultaneously. They felt her childhood fears, her adult struggles, her moments of joy and triumph. But beneath those human experiences, they touched something older, the vast knowledge of the progenitors, filtered through her unique human perspective. "That's impossible," the memory keeper whispered. Even the progenitors couldn't share consciousness so intimately. Liz helped Sarah to her feet, quantum energies dancing between them, because they were too ordered, too predictable. Human emotions, human chaos, they're creating new channels for the old powers to flow through. Reports flooded in from around the globe. In Kenya, awakened humans could communicate with quantum echoes of long-extinct species, accessing evolutionary memories stored in Earth's biosphere. In Antarctica, researchers found their consciousness could extend through time, touching the moments when their ancestors first chose to hide themselves on Earth. But with each awakening came new challenges. Some transformations overwhelmed their hosts, causing quantum surges that distorted reality around them. Others unlocked memories too vast for human minds to process, leading to temporary insanity until they learned to balance their dual nature. Liz established the first awakening center in the Nevada desert, a place where newly transformed humans could learn to control their abilities. The facility itself was a marvel of hybrid technology, progenitor quantum architecture combined with human-inspired organic design. The key, she taught her first class of awakened humans, is not to fight either aspect of yourselves. You are both the most advanced civilization the galaxy has ever known and beings shaped by billions of years of primitive survival. That contradiction is your strength. To demonstrate, she raised her hands, calling up a quantum field that everyone could see. Within it, she showed how human neural patterns interacted with progenitor quantum technology, creating entirely new forms of energy manipulation. "Our ancestors hid us on Earth because they couldn't defeat the entity," she said, watching her students experiment with their new abilities. "But they also gave us the greatest gift possible, the chance to evolve beyond their limitations, to become something unpredictable, adaptive, and free from the patterns it feeds upon." In orbit, the alien fleet watched in wonder as their creators continued to transform into something beyond even their original glory. Each awakening sent new ripples through space-time, a chaotic quantum symphony that grew stronger by the hour. But far out in the Kuiper Belt, those same ripples drew the entity closer, its hunger growing as it sensed power unlike anything it had devoured before. The quantum sensors aboard the Crystalline Collective's flagship screamed as reality itself buckled. At the edge of the solar system, space folded inward, creating a void that swallowed light and time alike. The entity had arrived. "It's consuming the Kuiper Belt," the Memory Keeper reported, its crystalline form dimming with dread. "Every object it absorbs adds to its mass, its computational power. We're detecting quantum patterns similar to those recorded during the fall of the Orion Collective." In the Awakening Center's command room, Liz watched the feeds with her hybrid senses. The entity wasn't just big. It was a living algorithm of destruction, a being that existed to consume ordered patterns of advanced thought. Through her human-enhanced perception, she could see how it broke down civilizations into pure computational power, adding their patterns to its own ever-growing complexity. "Show me the historical record," she commanded. "Every civilization it's devoured." The Memory Keeper projected a galactic map spanning millions of years. Points of light winked out in sequence, each representing an advanced species consumed by the entity. The pattern was clear. The more technologically advanced a civilization became, the more quickly it drew the entity's attention. "The quantum harmonics fell in 3 days," the Memory Keeper narrated. "The Silicon consciousness lasted a week. The Orion Collective, with all their dimensional mastery, survived only 2 weeks. Each time, the entity grew stronger, more capable of detecting and consuming advanced thought patterns. A sudden alert drew their attention. The entity had changed course, now moving directly toward Pluto. On the dwarf planet's surface, a research base staffed by awakened humans and alien scientists monitored the outer system. "Evacuate the base," Liz ordered, but she already knew it was too late. The entity moved faster than light, flowing through quantum shortcuts in space. They watched in horror as it engulfed Pluto. But something unexpected happened. The entity paused. For the first time in recorded history, its consumption pattern faltered. Through the quantum feeds, Liz saw why. The awakened humans on Pluto weren't fighting back with ordered, predictable patterns of advanced technology. Their responses were chaos incarnate, each person reacting with unique combinations of primitive instinct and quantum mastery. "It can't process them," she realized, hope rising in her chest. "The hybrid consciousness, it's too unpredictable for its algorithms." The entity withdrew from Pluto, leaving the base intact but forever changed. The dwarf planet's surface had been transformed into something that defied scientific description. A quantum sculpture born from the interaction between the entity's consumption attempt and humanity's chaotic defense. In the aftermath, the survivors reported their experience. "It tried to read us," Dr. James Chen transmitted from the warped remains of the base. "But every time it grabbed hold of one pattern in our minds, we shifted to another. Human consciousness doesn't follow the rules it expects." The Memory Keeper's form brightened with understanding. "Now we know why the progenitor plan was so specific. They didn't just hide themselves. They engineered the perfect weapon against the entity. Beings whose consciousness could wield the most advanced quantum technologies while maintaining the unpredictable adaptive patterns of primitive evolution. But their victory was short-lived. The entity hadn't retreated in defeat, it was adapting. Its void-like form began to pulse with new patterns, attempting to match the chaos it had encountered. Now it moved toward Neptune, its hunger only intensified by the challenge humanity presented. "It's learning," Liz announced to the gathered representatives of Earth and the alien fleet. For the first time in its existence, it's found prey it can't simply consume, and that's making it evolve. The quantum sensors detected new configurations forming within the entity's structure. It was restructuring itself, preparing for a new kind of hunt. The predator that had culled advanced civilizations for millions of years was changing its own nature to face the impossible prey it had found. "We have days, maybe hours," Liz said, watching the entity's approach through her hybrid senses. "It's coming for Earth. And this time, it won't try to consume us through order. It's learning to devour chaos itself." Around the world, awakened humans felt the entity's attention turn toward them. The final battle for humanity's existence was about to begin, and not even their ancestors could have predicted its form. Neptune's rings shimmered with quantum fire as the entity consumed them, each particle adding to its ever-growing complexity. But this time, humanity was ready. Liz stood in the global command center, surrounded by both awakened humans and representatives from the 17 child races, watching the impossible unfold. "The entity adapts through consumption," she explained, manipulating a quantum model of its structure. "It learns by devouring patterns. But what happens when it tries to consume something that never repeats itself?" On her signal, the first wave of humanity's defense began. Around the world, awakened humans linked their consciousness in ways the progenitors had never imagined possible. Rather than forming an ordered network, they created a symphony of controlled chaos. Sarah Chen, the empath who could share memories, connected thousands of minds into ever-shifting patterns. Raj, the reality-painting artist, drew windows between dimensions that followed no logical sequence. Dr. Martinez accelerated evolution itself in random bursts, creating quantum noise that obscured Earth's signature. "Look at the readings," the memory keeper marveled. "Your people aren't just using quantum technology. They're improvising with it. Every human approaches the same problem differently, creating a defense that can't be predicted or countered." Through her enhanced senses, Liz watched the entity struggle to process this new prey. It was used to civilizations that fought back with ordered weapons, with logical strategies it could analyze and consume. But humanity had become something else entirely. A team of awakened children in Lagos discovered they could turn their dreams into quantum shields, each one unique and impossible to replicate. Native American shamans combined their ancestral wisdom with quantum manipulation, creating protective spirits that danced through dimensions. Buddhist monks in Tibet achieved enlightenment that transformed their consciousness into quantum cones the entity couldn't solve. "This is what we were meant to become," Liz realized, watching the beautiful chaos of human creativity merge with progenitor power. Not just the return of an ancient race, but the birth of something new. Every human culture, every individual experience, adds another layer of unpredictability to our defense. The entity reached Uranus, consuming the ice giant in seconds, but as it processed the planet's mass, the absorbed material behaved strangely. The quantum patterns humanity had woven through the solar system infected its algorithms, introducing elements of chaos into its ordered consumption. "It's trying to adapt," the memory keeper warned, monitoring the entity's transformation. But each adaptation only exposes it to more of humanity's chaos. In orbit, the alien fleet watched in awe as their creators demonstrated powers beyond anything in their historical records. Humans weren't just wielding quantum technology. They were reinventing it through the lens of billions of years of survival, struggle, and imagination. A jazz musician in New Orleans found she could improvise with reality itself, her saxophone solos creating quantum harmonies that disrupted the entity's patterns. A graffiti artist in Tokyo tagged the quantum field with symbols that rewrote the laws of physics in localized bubbles. A chef in Paris discovered he could cook with probability, serving dishes that temporarily transformed anyone who ate them into quantum wildcards. Every human awakening adds something new to our defense, Liz transmitted to the global network. "We're not just fighting with power. We're fighting with creativity, with art, with the chaos of the human spirit." The entity paused at Saturn's orbit, its void-like form rippling with confusion. For the first time in its ancient existence, it faced prey that became more unpredictable the more it evolved. Each human awakening added new variables it couldn't process, new patterns that mutated the moment it tried to consume them. In the command center, Liz felt humanity's collective consciousness pulse with possibility. They weren't just the progenitors anymore. And they weren't just humans. They had become living paradoxes, wielding the most advanced technology in existence through the lens of primitive creativity. The entity began its final approach, its form now a storm of competing adaptations. The last battle for Earth would begin soon, and humanity would face it not as the first race reborn, but as something the universe had never seen before, a species that had mastered both order and chaos. The entity filled Earth's sky like a second sun, its void dark mass rippling with stolen energies from 1 million consumed civilizations. In the quantum realm, its presence was even more overwhelming, a pattern eater that had grown fat on the ordered thoughts of ancient races. But humanity was ready, not with warships or energy weapons or logical defenses, but with something far more powerful. Pure, unrestrained human chaos, amplified by progenitor technology. Every awakened human is a unique key, Liz broadcast to the global defense network. Don't coordinate, don't plan, just be human. The response was beautiful in its disorder. A Romanian folk dancer spun through quantum states, her movements creating spirals of probability that the entity couldn't track. A Brazilian street performer juggled snippets of space-time like they were tennis balls, each toss leading somewhere impossible. A Mongolian throat singer's harmonics rippled through dimensions, their frequencies impossible to predict or consume. The entity struck first, reaching out with tendrils of void to consume the ordered patterns of human civilization. But where previous races had fought back with logical weapons and failed, humanity responded with art, with emotion, with the raw, messy experience of being human. Now, Liz commanded, and humanity unleashed its full creative potential. Children's finger paintings became quantum windows into realities that shouldn't exist. Jazz musicians improvised with the fabric of space itself, their solos never repeating, impossible to predict or consume. Poets spoke words that rewrote local physics, their metaphors becoming literal as quantum power merged with human imagination. The entity recoiled, its consumption algorithms failing to process the chaos it encountered. Each time it adapted to one pattern of human consciousness, it encountered 1,000 more that defied its understanding. It was like trying to eat a feast that transformed into something new with every bite. It's working, the memory keeper transmitted, its crystalline form vibrating with excitement. The entity can't maintain coherence. Its own mass is working against it. Through her hybrid senses, Liz saw the truth. The entity had grown so large by consuming ordered patterns, but that same ordered structure made it vulnerable to humanity's chaos. Each human awakening introduced new variables it couldn't process, new ways of thinking that infected its algorithms like a virus of pure creativity. A team of awakened kindergarten teachers in Seoul reimagined the quantum field as a playground, their students' laughter creating ripples of possibility that the entity couldn't navigate. A group of elderly mahjong players in Singapore treated reality like a game, rearranging causality with each tile they placed. The entity thrashed in confusion, its form beginning to fragment. Billions of years of consuming ordered thoughts had never prepared it for this, a species that wielded chaos itself as a weapon, that turned unpredictability into an art form. This is what we truly are, Liz transmitted to both humanity and their watching children races. Not just the first race returned, but something greater. We are what happens when you combine the most advanced consciousness in the universe with the raw, beautiful chaos of human experience. The entity made one final attempt to adapt, trying to match humanity's chaos with its own variations, but in doing so, it violated its own fundamental nature. The patterns it had consumed over eons began to unravel, released by its failing coherence. In its death throes, The entity became a window into all the civilizations it had devoured. Liz perceived echoes of incredible races, of beautiful and ordered minds that had achieved their own forms of greatness before being consumed. Their knowledge, their achievements, their patterns, all began to break free as the entity's structure collapsed. Remember, she broadcast to the universe at large, the greatest power isn't in perfect order or pure chaos, but in learning to dance between them. The entity imploded, its mass converting into a burst of quantum potential that seeded the galaxy with the freed knowledge of countless civilizations. Humanity had not just survived, they had become something new, something that transcended both their primitive and advanced heritage. As the light faded, Earth's sky cleared to reveal a changed universe. The first race had not just returned, they had evolved into something greater, beings who could wield the most advanced power in existence through the lens of pure human creativity. The age of ordered pattern was over. The age of beautiful chaos had begun.